The man on the dragon throne had a face dark as water, and the edict deposing the empress was read aloud, making all the civil and military officials fall silent as cicadas in winter. The empress is excessively jealous, and her virtue does not match her position. Effective immediately, she is to be relocated to the cold palace and may not leave without an edict. But in my mind, I heard his heart-wrenching wails. Woo woo woo. I was wrong. I'll never dare again. Empress, please, I am begging you. Give me a way out. I'll take back the order immediately. Looking at his handsome face forcing that cold expression, I almost laughed out loud. Fine then, I just won't beg. I'd like to see just how long this two-faced majesty of mine can keep up the act. In the golden Luan hall, the scent of sandalwood was so thick, it was cloying. Suffocating enough to make one unable to breathe. I wore the elaborate court dress of the empress, kneeling on the cold, hard golden bricks. My knees ached painfully from the hard surface. Before me, the eunuch announcing the edict spoke in a shrill voice, enunciating each word with utmost clarity. Empress Shen is excessively jealous by nature, and her virtue does not match her position. Each word was like a heavy hammer smashing down on the Shen family's century-old reputation. My father, the Duke of Zhongguo, his body was barely cold. My brother, the general of Zhenbei, was far away at the borderlands, and he, Xiaoyan, chose this very moment to deliver me a fatal blow. All the civil and military officials were silent as death, even deliberately softening their breathing, sympathetic, gloating, coldly observing. Countless gazes focused on me, as if they wanted to devour me alive. I could feel the smug yet venomous gaze noble consort quick as my way. She wore a gorgeous palace gown today, her makeup exquisite, just waiting to watch the spectacle of my deposition. I raised my head and looked toward the man sitting high upon the dragon throne. My husband, the emperor of Great Liang, Xiaoyan. He wore a black dragon robe, his face stern, his eyes as deep as an unfathomable pool of cold water, his thin lips pressed tight. His entire being radiating the imperial authority that warned stay away. He was the executioner who personally pushed me onto the guillotine. But just as towering hatred surged in my heart, a man's voice that didn't belong here at all, choked with tears, exploded in my mind. Wu Yu. My Yu, I've wronged you. I suddenly froze. What voice? I am not human. I am a bastard. Yu is kneeling on the ground. Her knees must hurt so much, right? I so badly want to rush down and pick her up in my arms. No, I must hold back. Xiaoyan, you must hold back. This is to protect her. I looked around. The civil and military officials kept their heads lowered. The eunuchs and palace maids held their breath. No one was speaking. Then this voice was, my gaze fell back on that man upon the dragon throne. He still looked like a cold, ruthless emperor, his jawline taut and tense. But the wailing in my head continued. Why won't she beg me? Ye, please beg me, as long as you speak up, even just a single glance. I'll take back this damn imperial edict immediately. Look at me. Look at me. I was completely dumbfounded. This is Xiaoyan's inner thoughts. I can hear his inner thoughts. This realization struck me like lightning, shocking me even more than when I heard the edict to depose the empress. The eunuch announcing the edict had finished reading. Effective immediately. Relocate to Chaoyang Palace. Forbidden to leave without an edict by imperial decree. Chaoyang Palace, the name sounds nice enough. In reality, it is the cold palace that everyone avoids like the plague. I took a deep breath, suppressing the tempestuous waves in my heart. This consort accepts the edict. I spoke calmly, my voice not trembling in the slightest. I saw Xiaoyan's hand resting on the dragon throne's armrest, suddenly clenched tight, veins bulging. She accepted it. She actually just accepted it like that. She doesn't love me anymore. She definitely doesn't love me anymore. I am screwed. I really screwed up this time. How am I supposed to coax Yu back? Is she really angry? She must be furious. I am such a giant man, baby. I lowered my eyelids, concealing the flicker of amusement in my eyes. So that is how it is. Jealous, virtue unworthy of her position. All an act. He was so anxious inside he nearly wanted to cry, yet he still had to force a dignified expression on his face. How interesting. Sisters, let's analyze this opening. Pay attention to the first word. Qingyu says, it is not wronged, not angry, but interesting. This is the core underlying logic I designed for this character. An ordinary female lead would cry here, would break down, would beg him to take back his order. But Qingyu is different. At the moment when others think she is most humiliated, she obtained the strongest cheat in the whole scene. She can hear the emperor's inner thoughts. The ultimate pleasure of power fantasy novels has never been I will defeat you, but rather I've already seen through you, and you don't even know it yet. This information gap is stratospheric. I held back my laughter and slowly stood up at the guiding eunuch's word, please. The numbness in my knees instantly surged up and my body swayed. You can't stand steady. Li Diquan, you fool. Hurry up and support her. My heart aches so much more painful than being cut by a knife. His inner roar almost shattered my eardrums. Li Diquan, the head eunuch by his side, shuddered and quickly trotted over, wanting to help me up. But I steadied myself first. I faced the direction of the dragon throne and performed a textbook perfect farewell bow. This consort takes her leave. Then, without looking back, I turned around and walked toward the palace exit. I can feel it. That scorching gaze has been clinging to my back this whole time. She left. She left without even looking back. She couldn't even be bothered to spare me a single glance. Am I going to lose her forever? Woo. I can't sleep without the Empress holding me. Walking out of the Golden Luan Hall, the blinding sunlight pours over me, yet I feel cold all over. This act, who exactly is he putting it on for? And for what purpose? I look at the young eunuch leading the way ahead. His steps are hurried, as if staying even one more second would bring him bad luck. Behind me is the grand procession that belongs to my Kuning Palace. Following along, my personal maid Juxin has cried until her eyes are swollen, like walnuts. As she walks, she quietly voices her indignation on my behalf. Your Majesty, how could His Majesty treat you like this? The Duke of Jianguo just passed away, and His Majesty already... She chokes up, unable to continue. I pat her hand, signaling her to calm down. Don't cry. Things haven't reached that point yet. I know perfectly well in my heart that Xiao Yan doesn't really intend to depose me, but why on earth is this happening? We continue in silence, passing through the long palace corridor. The palace servants who would normally perform grand bows upon seeing me now keep their distance, whispering and pointing. This is human nature. Finally, we stop in front of a remote palace hall. The plaque on the palace gate reads 3 characters, Keoyang Palace. The vermilion lacquer was already mottled, exuding an air of decay and dilapidation. This is my cold palace. Pushing open the heavy palace gate, a wave of dust and musty smell hit me in the face. The courtyard was overgrown with weeds, utterly desolate. Juxin burst into tears with a wah, crying even harder. Your Majesty, how can anyone live in this place? But I was stunned, because although the courtyard was desolate, the doors and windows of the main hall were brand new and spotlessly clean. I pushed the door and entered. The scene inside shocked me once again. The room was immaculate, with tables, chairs, and beds, all crafted from the finest golden nanmu wood. On the curio shelf sat precious porcelain from the previous dynasty. On the vanity table lay a complete set of Eastern pearl hair ornaments, with my favorite spiral shell eyebrow ink beside them. The bedding on the bed was freshly changed, with exquisite twin lotus flowers on one stem embroidered on the brocade quilt. The charcoal brazier in the corner burned vigorously, making the entire room as warm as spring. How could this be the cold palace? These furnishings were even more luxurious than when I was at Kuning Palace. Will you like it? Is this bed soft enough? Is the charcoal fire too strong? Don't let it make my Yu uncomfortable. I specifically had people clean this place spotlessly, everything arranged according to her preferences. Can she understand my intentions? Xiao Yan's inner thoughts continued rambling on. I could almost imagine how restless he must be right now, sitting in the hall of mental cultivation. Juxin was also dumbfounded and stopped crying. Your Majesty, a barely perceptible smile curved at the corner of my lips. Since we're here, we might as well make the best of it. I want to see just what that duplicitous His Majesty of mine is really up to. If he wants to put on a show, I'll play along. Let's see who loses their composure first. That night, I slept exceptionally well. Meanwhile, Xiao Yan in the distant hall of mental cultivation reportedly didn't sleep a wink all night. The voice in his head also kept me up all night. Is Yue asleep yet? The bed in the cold palace is so hard. She definitely can't sleep. Is her blanket tucked in properly? She always likes to kick off her blanket in her sleep. Without me to warm her, are her feet ice cold? I really want to go see her. No. Hold it in. Now is not the time yet. My yeye, just hang in there a bit longer. Once I've cleaned out all those vermin, I'll bring you back with honor and glory, vermin. My heart stirred. It seems this grand performance of deposing the Empress is being staged for certain people in the court, and I am the key element in his plan that needs to be protected. I opened my eyes looking at the exquisite bed canopy above, and suddenly felt that these days in the cold palace might be quite interesting. Early the next morning, I was awakened by the aroma of food. Juxin walked in carrying a food box, her face full of excitement. Your Majesty, look, it is from the imperial kitchen. The food box opened to reveal exquisite treasure congee, crystal shrimp dumplings, crab roe shumai, and a plate of my favorite osmanthus sugar cake. All my usual favorites. I picked up a piece of sugar cake and took a bite, sweet but not cloying. Eat more, your is too thin. This is something I specifically had the imperial kitchen make. Wonder if it suits her taste. Must not let anyone else figure out I sent this, or the act won't go on. Xiao Yan's inner thoughts arrived right on schedule, like a worried old father. I finished my breakfast in a leisurely manner. Juxin, put away all these dishes properly. Yes, Your Majesty. Wait, I called out to her. When you go out later, tell people that I am doing very well in the cold palace, eating well and sleeping soundly, enjoying the peace and quiet. Juxin froze for a moment, then understanding my meaning, covered her mouth and laughed. This servant obeys. Over the next few days, my life in the cold palace could only be described as heavenly. Every day sipping tea, reading books, or basking in the sun in the courtyard. Xiao Yan's trusted eunuch Li Diquan would find different ways to send things to me every day. Today it was a set of rare unique editions, under the pretense that His Majesty discovered these old items while cleaning out his study, and thought Her Majesty the Empress might like them. Tomorrow it is a precious cloud brocade, claimed to be something the Imperial Household Department dug up while organizing the storage, seemed a waste to throw away. The day after, it is a box of pearls tributed from the EC with an even more ridiculous excuse. It is taking up space in the storage. His Majesty told the servant to dispose of it as I see fit. All these items, under the pretense of old goods and disposal, are continuously sent to my Keoyang Palace, and Xiao Yang's inner thoughts have become my daily entertainment during meals. Yue likes reading. She's been searching for this rare copy of the Nanhua Jing for so long she'll definitely be happy. This cloud brocade would surely complement her complexion when made into clothes. Wonder if she'll bear to wear it. My Empress deserves the finest things in all the world. I accept everything without question, and my life becomes increasingly comfortable. Soon, news that the deposed Empress Shen is living leisurely in the cold palace spreads throughout the palace. I even heard that noble consort Huai in her Changchun palace smashed her favorite set of Rukiln teaware in rage. She can't understand why a deposed empress banished to the cold palace, can still remain so composed. Not only am I composed, I am also very idle. So idle I am bored, which makes me want to give my husband, who is busy with state affairs yet has to spare energy for his act, something to do. This afternoon, as I am reading by the window, Xiao Yan's inner thoughts start flooding my mind again. That old fox, the Minister of Personnel, is playing Tai Chi with me again. Can't make a move on him yet, not until the military power is fully recovered. So annoying. I miss Yue. What is Yue doing now? Is she thinking about some young Master Zhang or young Master Li again? I found it quite amusing. What, young Master Zhang or young Master Li, such old vinegar, still being savored till now? Well then, let me make you even more annoyed. I picked up a jade pendant from the table. This was the love token he gave me before our wedding, and I've been wearing it close to my body ever since. I stroked the smooth surface of the jade pendant, then relaxed my hand with a crack. The jade pendant fell to the ground and shattered into two halves. Juxing, who was attending to me nearby, was startled. Your Majesty. I let out a sigh as if feeling regretful. Broken is broken. Even people change, let alone objects. Without another glance at the shattered jade pendant, I continued reading my book. But I knew this news would soon reach Xiao Yan's ears. Sure enough, in less than half an hour, from the direction of the Hall of Mental Cultivation came a dull thud of something massive collapsing. Immediately after came Xiao Yan's hysterical inner roar broken. She smashed the love token jade pendant. Oh my god, she really doesn't love me anymore. She's going to give up on me. It is over, it is over, it is over this time. It is really over. I could imagine how frantic he must be at this moment, probably having flipped over the desk in the imperial study. I turned a page of my book, feeling exceptionally pleased. Let's see you keep acting. Let's see you keep pretending. Let's see how long you can hold out. At night, I was sleeping soundly. Suddenly, I was woken by a burst of noisy commotion. I threw on my outer garment and got up, only to see the courtyard brightly lit. Several guards were blocking someone. That person was wearing thin nightclothes, hair disheveled, insisting on barging in. Get lost, all of you get lost. It was Xiao Yan. The guards were so scared, they knelt all over the ground, but still didn't dare let him through. Your Majesty, please calm down. This is the cold palace. You cannot enter. Your Majesty, are you sleepwalking? Xiao Yan blocked from entering. anxiously pasting circles. Let me in. I need to see Yer. Has she really stopped wanting me? I need to ask her myself. What if she has really found some young Master Zhang or young Master Li? I'll exterminate their 9 generations. No, I can't go in. If I go in now, all the acting from before will be for nothing. He was torn between 2 conflicting forces inside, his whole person almost splitting apart. In the end, reason, or rather what remained of his acting skills, prevailed over emotion. He stomped his foot hard and turned to run. As he ran, he kept muttering, I am sleepwalking. I don't know anything, watching his fleeing figure. I finally couldn't hold it in and laughed out loud. Jackson lit the lamp and came over to drape a cloak over me. Your Majesty, did you see everything? I nodded, smiling so hard I was almost in tears. I saw it. I saw an emperor who was about to drive himself crazy, saying the opposite of what he meant. Life in the cold palace is getting more and more interesting. Noble consort couldn't sit still any longer after all. She thought that I'd been pretending to be calm for so long. I must be putting on a brave front, and that just one more push would make me completely break down. So, under the banner of deep sisterly affection, visiting an old friend, she came in grand fashion. Not only did she come herself, but she also brought along a group of concubines who were on good terms with her chattering beauties, dripping with jewels and treasures, making my dilapidated Kaoyang palace look even more shabby by comparison. Noble consort he, dressed in luxurious robes, walked leisurely into my main hall, supported by a palace maid's hand. She waved a handkerchief embroidered with gold thread in front of her nose with disgust. Oh my sister, this place of yours is rather shabby. She called me sister with her mouth, but the contempt and smugness in her eyes were completely unconcealed. I was sitting by the window drinking tea, and didn't even lift an eyelid. How thoughtful of you. Little sister, this place is quiet and I am quite used to living here. The other concubines whispered among themselves, pointing and gesturing at me. Look at her, even in this situation, she is still putting on the airs of an empress. Exactly. His Majesty has already cast her aside and she is still pretending. Noble consort Howie sat down in the chair opposite me with the air of a mistress of the house. Sister, don't be too heartbroken. His Majesty had no choice but to make this decision for the sake of the Liang's realm and state. She paused, picked up the teacup on the table to look at it, then put it down with disdain. After all, for a woman, the most important thing is to bear children for the imperial family. Sister has been in the palace for many years without producing any offspring, so no wonder His Majesty would. She didn't finish her sentence, but the meaning was already quite obvious. She was mocking me for being unable to bear children. I finally raised my eyes to look at her and smiled faintly. Sister speaks truly. However, speaking of bearing children, I am actually more worried about your health. Sister Noble Consort Hai was startled. What do you mean? I looked her up and down, then let out a sigh. I see that sister has a sallow complexion and dark circles under your eyes. This is not a good sign. I imagine you've been overworking yourself lately, with excessive heart fire that has damaged your foundation. Sister should pay more attention to recuperation. Otherwise, even if you truly become empress in the future, this phoenix body of yours. I shook my head and said no more. Noble consort Hei's face instantly turned greened. Sisters, I have to pause here for a second. Did you all notice Consort Hei brought a whole entourage to trample on Qing Yu? And every single thing she said was a carefully prepared dirty trick. Stuff like, without issue, His Majesty's disdain, every sentence a knife. But how did Qing Yu counter? She didn't curse, didn't cry, just used one move of caring about my sister's health, and turned it right back to stab at what Consort Hui cares about most, her appearance and health, hitting the mark perfectly. This is what I call intellectual dominance. You use a knife, I use a mirror, making you see how ugly you are. 100 times classier than straight-up cursing vision. Expanded. What she cares about most is her own appearance and health. With me saying it like that, doubts immediately started gnawing at her heart. Right at that moment, Xiaoyan's inner thoughts intruded at the worst possible time. That idiot consort Howie, who gave her the guts to mess with Yuryu. Is she tired of living? I am coming right now. Yeah, just wait a bit longer. I'll come back you up. My heart stirred. Perfect timing. I immediately clutched my chest, furrowed my brows, and put on a weak appearance as if I'd been badly upset. You insolent wretch. My voice trembled as if I'd been wounded to the heart by Consort Hui's words. You are merely a consort, yet you dare to slander this palace here. Seeing that I'd finally broken, Consort Hui laughed triumphantly. Sister, don't forget. You're nothing but a deposed empress now. His Majesty will soon establish a new empress. Tell me, who do you think will get that position? She leaned in close to me, lowered her voice, and said in a volume only the two of us could hear, Once I become empress, the first thing I'll do is cut off all your cold palace allowances. I'll make you unable to live. Unable to die? How vicious. I cooperatively trembled all over as if enraged. You wouldn't dare. Just then, a thunderous roar of fury came from outside the hall. Outrageous, Xiao Yan had arrived. He wore casual attire and strode in with large steps, his face looking like it was covered in ice. Only Lai Diquan followed behind him, clearly having rushed here in haste. The concubines in the hall were scared out of their wits and knelt down in unison. Greetings, Your Majesty. Noble consort whose face also instantly turned deathly pale. She never would have imagined that the emperor would suddenly appear here. Xiao Yan didn't even glance at them and walked straight to me. When he saw my pale complexion and tottering body, the fury in his eyes nearly burst forth. My Yeyu, my treasure, look how pale that little face is. It is all my fault for arriving late. That venomous woman Hui, I'll tear her apart. In his heart, he had already cut noble consort Hui into 1,000 pieces, but on the surface he only looked at her coldly. Noble consort Hui, what audacity you have! His voice carried not a hint of warmth. How dare you come to the cold palace to harass the deposed empress, and even speak so arrogantly, showing no respect for your sovereign? Noble consort He was so frightened, she immediately knelt on the ground, trembling all over. Your Majesty, this consort was only worried about elder sister and wanted to come see her. Worried? Xiao Yan sneered coldly. I think you came to gloat. He kicked over a chair beside him, the loud crash making everyone shrink their necks. Even if the empress has been deposed, she was once my wife, your mistress. Is it your place to lord it over here? Well, scold her some more. How dare she bully my Yer if I don't teach you a lesson? You won't know who is in charge of this harem. I kept my head lowered, suppressing my laughter, my shoulders slightly shaking, as I pretended to sob pitifully. Seeing me like this, Xiao Yan's heart ached beyond measure. He immediately ordered Noble Consort Hai's words and conduct are improper. Her virtue lacking, effective immediately. She is confined to Changchun Palace for 1 month to reflect on her mistakes behind closed doors, and must copy the Women's Code 100 times. As for the rest of you, return to your respective palaces without an edict. You are not to set foot in Chaoyang Palace again. And you, he pointed at Noble Consort Hui, get back to your Changchun Palace and copy those texts yourself. Stop getting in my sight here. Noble Consort Hui's face was ashen, unable to even utter a plea for mercy. She could only leave in a disheveled state with the support of palace maids. This fast thus came to an end. After Xiao Yan dealt with Noble Consort Hui, he turned around, wanting to say something to me, but seeing my aggrieved appearance, he opened his mouth yet couldn't say a single word. The heartache, self-blame, and anger intertwined in his eyes were extremely complex. Yue, I am sorry. It is all my fault for letting you suffer this grievance. Just wait a bit longer soon. Very soon I'll be able to handle everything. I just kept my head down, not looking at him. I knew that the more I acted this way, the more tormented he felt inside. In the end, he let out a heavy sigh and turned to leave without a word. Watching his departing figure, I could even sense the loneliness and chagrin emanating from that silhouette. In my ears was his gradually fading muttering, tinged with a bit of secret delight. Yue looked at me today, when she was being bullied. The first person she thought of was still me. She still has me in her heart. She still loves me. I finally couldn't help but burst out laughing. This delusional man really is terribly adorable. Longing is a very mysterious thing. For Xiao Yan, it is probably a disease that makes his IQ go offline. After the failed sleepwalking at the cold palace gate, he laid low for a few days. But these past few days, the barrage in my mind has been getting denser each day. Miss Yue, I miss her. I miss her when reviewing memorials. I miss her when eating. And I miss her even more when sleeping. Without her, I can't even enjoy my food. Now I have to go see her. But the gods all know me. What should I do? I've got it. And so, on a pleasant sunny afternoon, I was flying a kite in the courtyard with Juxing. A little eunuch wearing coarse cloth eunuch robes, head lowered sweeping the ground, appeared in my courtyard. He swept very slowly and clumsily, sweeping a single leaf back and forth for ages. Moreover, he kept drifting toward me, seemingly by accident. Jusin looked at him a few times with some wariness, but I recognized him at a glance, that figure, that familiar jawline occasionally revealed when he lifted his eyes. Who else could it be but my lovesick majesty? He actually disguised himself as a little eunuch and snuck into his own cold palace. I have to hand it to him for thinking of that. I held back my laughter, pretended not to see him, and continued happily flying the kite with Juxing. My lady, look, it is flying so high. Juxing tilted her head back and shouted happily. The kite flew freely in the sky, like a bird that had broken free from its constraints. I smiled with my eyes curved in crescents. Genuinely happy, Xiaoyan hid under a tree not far away. Secretly watching me, the broom in his hand was nearly crushed out of shape by his grip. Yue smiled. She hasn't smiled at me like that in so long. She's smiling so happily at a kite. I am so jealous of that kite. And Juxin, she gets to play with Yue. I am so jealous of her too, listening to his sour inner thoughts. I felt both annoyed and amused. Getting jealous of a kite and a palace maid. Only he, Xiaoyan, could do something like this. My eyes rolled as I decided to add more fuel to the fire. I said to Jusin, pretending to be casual, come to think of it, I remember someone. Back when I was still at home, father hired a tutor for me. That teacher had a son surnamed Zhang, who was the best at making kites. The kites he made not only flew high but looked beautiful too. Once he even made a phoenix-shaped one for me. As I spoke, I reminisced, showing a nostalgic expression on my face. In truth, there was no such young Master Zhang at all. I was making it all up, but Xiaoyan didn't know that. When he heard this, the vinegar jar in his mind completely tipped over. Young Master Zhang? Which young Master Zhang? And making phoenix kites. What is he trying to do? Covet my empress. I'll execute his 9 generations. No, 10 generations. Yue actually still remembers him and smiles so happily the broomstick in his hand let out pitiful creaking sounds. I wasn't even finished yet. That young Master Zhang, not only can he make kites, but he is also gentle and refined like jade, always speaking softly and gently, especially tender and considerate. I continued to embellish the story, not like some people who keep a stern face all day long, as if everyone owes them money. I glanced meaningfully at that little eunuch sweeping the floor. Xiaoyan's face, even from far away, I could feel it had already turned as green as a vegetable leaf. Gentle and refined like jade, tender and considerate. Where am I not tender? Where am I not considerate? I am just not good at expressing myself. And what do you mean by keeping a stern face? That is the dignity of an emperor. Dignity, understand. Yue actually likes that kind of pretty boy. Watching him about to explode with anger on the spot, I was delighted inside. I sighed and said wistfully, now that I've become a deposed empress, trapped in this cold palace, it is not so bad. In a few years, His Majesty might forget about me. By then, perhaps I could ask for the grace to leave the palace. At that time, going to find that young Master Zhang wouldn't be out of the question. I hadn't finished speaking. That little eunuch, who had been keeping his head down sweeping, could no longer keep up the act. He strode over and just accidentally stepped on our kite string. With a snap, the kite string broke. The kite in the sky swayed and plummeted down headfirst. Oh no, Juxin cried out in alarm. I looked at the broken string and furrowed my brow with feigned regret. My kite, Xiaoyan stepped on and broke the string, then froze for a moment himself, as if he hadn't expected to be so impulsive. He hastily lifted his foot, pretending nothing had happened. Well done, that'll teach you to think about other men. This kite is the embodiment of that young Master Zhang. Stomp it to death. No, how could I be so impulsive? Yue must be angry now. What do I do? What do I do? He kept his head down, not daring to look at me. His face flushed bright red. Then he dropped the broom and made up a lame excuse. My stomach hurts, gotta hit the latrine with that. He ran off without looking back. That retreating figure couldn't have been more pathetic. Watching him flee in such disarray, I couldn't hold it in anymore and collapsed on the ground, laughing together with Juxin. Teasing this say one thing mean another emperor was truly one of life's great pleasures. After the laughter subsided, I gradually calmed down through these few tests. I became increasingly certain that Xiaoyan's decision to depose me and send me to the cold palace was definitely not simply imperial scheming or some kind of tantrum. His inner breakdown the night he shattered the jade pendant proved he cared about me extremely deeply. His coming to the cold palace in disguise and getting jealous over non-existent rivals further showed he loved me to his core. So then, for him to go through all this trouble to put on such an elaborate act, there must be a huge secret hidden behind it. A secret that forced him to push me away and protect me in this way. I can't just sit around and wait anymore. treating him like entertainment. I am his empress, I am his wife. Husband and wife are one, sharing honor and disgrace together. He is in trouble, I can't just stand by and watch. I began having Juxin pay attention to news from outside the palace, especially movements in the court. Soon, the news came back. Recently, the Minister of Personnel's faction has been unusually active in court, even downright arrogant. Not only did Xiaoyan not suppress them, he even promoted several of the Minister of Personnel's protagonists in succession. Even noble consort Hei's brother, that good-for-nothing wastrel, was appointed by him as deputy commander of the Feather Forest Guard. This series of moves made everyone in and out of court believe that the emperor was going to fully support his relatives by marriage and suppress the old ministers. Everyone says that noble consort Hai is about to replace me and become the new empress, that the ministers mentioned will become the new imperial relatives, wielding power over the court. Only I know that all of this is fake. From Xiaoyan's fragmented inner thoughts, I piece together the truth. Old fox, your tail is finally showing. I'll let you act smug for a few more days. Once I get the military tally for the capital region garrison, I'll catch all you parasites in one net. How dare you scheme against my empress? I'll have your entire clans executed. I am just putting your through hardship, having to stay in this cold palace for a while longer. It turns out the Minister of Personnel's faction had long been deeply entrenched, too powerful to be easily removed. They not only monopolized the court affairs, but have even extended their reach into the military. Xiaoyan had just ascended the throne, his foundation unstable, unable to confront them head-on. So he could only use this method of killing with praise to make them lower their guard, while secretly accumulating strength, preparing for a thunderous strike. And I, as his most beloved empress, and also the daughter of the late Duke Zhengguo, became the hostage they most wanted to eliminate or control. Deposing the empress to the cold palace was to remove me from the center of this whirlpool, to make me a worthless abandoned piece, thereby ensuring my safety. Having figured all this out, my heart was filled with both gratitude and heartache. This fool. He would rather bear the infamy himself, rather endure the pain of longing, just to keep me safe. But I, Shen Qingyu, have never been a delicate flower that needs to be kept in a greenhouse. I am the daughter of Duke Zhengguo, a descendant of a military family. My father once conquered this land for him, and I too can defend this land for him. On the very night I made up my mind, I heard a hint of anxiety in Xiaoyan's inner thoughts. The handover of military command tokens at the capital garrison camp isn't going smoothly. The people from the Ministry of Personnel have planted quite a few moles inside, likely wanting to cause trouble from within. I must think of a way to get the military command tokens in hand without any mishaps. My heart tightened. Military power is the key to all of this. If the military power cannot be obtained, Xiaoyan's entire plan will fall short at the last step and may even backfire on him. I can't wait any longer. I've left him out there charging into battle alone for too long. I walked to the vanity and opened a long sealed secret compartment. Inside was a small tiger head token and a roster. This was what my father had quietly left for me before he died. He said, unless absolutely necessary, don't use this power. But now, this is that absolutely necessary moment. The roster recorded the names of all the old subordinates loyal to the Duke of Zhengguo's manor. They were scattered throughout the military, seemingly dormant. Yet they were a force capable of turning the tide. I spread out paper and brush dipped in ink and wrote a secret letter. The letter had no unnecessary words, only a date, a location, and a code for troop mobilization. I carefully folded the letter and sealed it with wax. Then I called for Juxin. Juxin, find a way to get this letter out of the palace and deliver it to the shopkeeper of Tongfu Records' rice shop on the west side of the city. I placed the tiger head token in her hands. When he sees this, he'll understand. Juxin knew the matter was of great importance and nodded solemnly. Your Majesty, rest assured, even if it cost me my life, I will definitely deliver the letter. I watched her departing figure and clenched my fists. Xiaoyan, you are not fighting alone. From now on, you have me. Juxin was very capable. Within 2 days, she successfully delivered the secret letter. The old subordinates of the Duke of Zhengguo's manor were like a precision machine that had slumbered for too long once awakened. They began to operate efficiently. In the imperial court, all was calm, but in secret, a silent purge began within the capital garrison. The personnel the Minister of Personnel had planted in the military were being removed from key positions, one after another due to various accidents. Some accidentally fell from their horses during drills and broke their legs. Some were caught red-handed gambling and drinking and were directly dismissed from office. Still others had old accounts of embezzling military provisions dug up and were thrown into prison. In just a few days, more than half of the minister's faction's influence in the military had been uprooted. They were overwhelmed with problems, yet couldn't find any cause, assuming it was just their own bad luck. Meanwhile, Xiao Yan, in the hall of mental cultivation, was both surprised and delighted. Strange, truly strange. Just when I was worrying about how to deal with those thorns, they fell on their own. Could it be the secret guards Father Emperor left behind helping me? No, that is not right. I've taken over all of Father Emperor's secret guards. And I never gave such an order, a pie falling from the sky, whatever. It is a good thing anyway. This way, the military tally will soon be in my hands, listening to his utterly perplexed confusion. My heart felt both sweet and amused silly. It is your empress helping you. We are husband and wife, your realm. I will naturally protect with all my strength. The capital garrison matter is progressing smoothly. As for noble consort Hai's side, it is time to give her a warning too. After the 1-month confinement period ended, not only did she not restrain herself, she became even more impatient. Her father, the Minister of Personnel, was probably urging her to get pregnant with the imperial heir as soon as possible, so that the position of relatives of the empress would be more secure. So imperial concubine Hui began to frantically create chance encounters in the palace Tode. She ran into His Majesty, taking a walk in the imperial garden tomorrow. On the way to the Empress Dowager's palace, she ran into His Majesty going to pay his respects. She dressed herself up like a peacock in full bloom, trying every way possible to display her charm. Unfortunately, Xiao Yan wasn't buying it at all. Every time he saw imperial concubine He, it was like seeing a fly he'd frown and take a detour. So annoying! Why does this woman keep haunting me like a ghost, dressed like a damn peacock? Utterly tasteless. How can she compare to my Yueyu, even if Yueyu wore a burlap sack? She'd be more beautiful than her. Stay away from me. I am a married man. My heart only has room for my empress. Xiao Yan's inner desire to survive was practically overflowing. Hearing this put me in a great mood, so I decided to help him out and also give imperial concubine a profound lesson. From Xiao Yan's inner thoughts, I learned his schedule for the next day in advance. He was going to the pavilion at Changxin Lake to review memorials, seeking some peace and quiet, and imperial concubine Hui, having also received the news, was preparing to stage a falling into water to be rescued melodrama there. How clicked she? The next day, I had Juxing accidentally lure a mischievous imperial cat to the vicinity of Changxin Lake. That cat was raised by the Empress Dowager named Snowball, with a coat of snow-white fur, beautiful and precious. But very few people knew that noble consort Hui was severely allergic to cat fur. When Xiao Yan sat down in the pavilion, noble consort Hui, having calculated the timing perfectly, wearing a thin gauze dress, was preparing to accidentally fall into the lake. Snowball sprang out from the grass and affectionately rubbed against noble consort Hui's ankle. Noble consort Hui's scream echoed throughout the entire Changxin Lake. Her carefully prepared drowning act didn't get performed. Instead, her allergic reaction kicked in first. In front of Xiao Yan and all the palace servants, her entire body quickly broke out in large patches of red rashes. Itching so badly, she kept scratching, completely losing her composure. That scene was as miserable as it could get. Xiao Yan sat in the pavilion, watching dumbfounded. Serves her right, trying to scam me. This is what you get. But honestly, she looks uniquely ugly like this. His heart remained completely unmoved, and he even felt like laughing a bit. Finally, he stood up with furrowed brows and a look of disgust on his face. Saman, noble consort He has offended the imperial presence, startled the Empress Dowager's beloved cat. Her appearance is improper, her words and actions unbecoming. Immediately send her back to Changchun Palace and confine her for another month. Without my decree, she is not permitted to leave. Noble consort Hui wanted to die right then and there. She tried to steal a chicken but ended up losing the rice. Her plan was a complete and utter failure. Watching her miserable state as she was dragged away by the palace servants, I sat in Kaohsiung Palace and leisurely took a sip of tea. Trying to fight me, you are still too green. The Minister of Personnel was no fool. His military forces had been uprooted, and his daughter repeatedly frustrated in her attempts to win favor. He finally sensed that things seemed to be spiraling beyond his control. A tremendous unease loomed over him. He began to suspect that the emperor's incompetence and infatuation might both be an act, And that deposed Empress Shen Qingqing, Yu, who had been cast into the cold palace, might not be as simple as a discarded pawn. As long as she lived, she remained a threat. A murderous intent began to surface in the shadows. On this day, as usual, I prepared to have my midday meal. The food was personally delivered by Li Dikun 4 dishes and a soup, meat and vegetables paired together, looking quite appetizing. I was just about to pick up my chopsticks. Suddenly, a sharp, heart-wrenching roar exploded in my mind. That voice belonged to Xiaoyan. But it was unlike any time before. It was filled with extreme terror and madness. Something's wrong, my heart's racing. Why is my heart pounding so hard? Like it is being squeezed tight by a hand, can't catch my breath. Yue, it is Yue. My Yue is in danger. This thought was so intense that I even felt a real sense of suffocation. I looked at the food before me and instantly understood. I sprang to my feet and shouted sternly at Juxin, "Don't touch that food." Almost at the same time, bang, a loud crash. The main hall doors of Chaoyang Palace were kicked open from the outside. Wood splinters flew everywhere. Xiaoyan, wearing his dragon robe, rushed in like a madman. His hair was somewhat disheveled, his face drained of all color, and those eyes that were always deep and indifferent were now filled with panic and fear. He swept before me like a whirlwind. Then, under the astonished gazes of Juxin and me, he raised his foot and kicked viciously at the table laden with food. Crash! The table was kicked over. Bowls and dishes shattered all over the floor, soup and dishes spilling everywhere. "Your Majesty!" Juxin was so frightened she dropped to her knees. But Xiaoyan acted as if he hadn't heard. He stared fixedly at the mess on the floor. His chest heaving violently, he pulled a silver hairpin from his hair and tossed it into the sauce of one of the dishes. That shiny silver hairpin turned an alarming jet black almost instantly. Poisoned, and it was deadly poison. My back was instantly soaked with cold sweat. If it weren't for Xiaoyan's inner thoughts, warning me in advance if he hadn't arrived in time, I didn't dare think further. Xiaoyan looked at the blackened silver hairpin, his body swaying as if all strength had been drained from him. He suddenly turned around and pulled me tightly into his arms. The force was so great, as if he wanted to melt me into his bones and blood. I could feel his body trembling uncontrollably. This was the first time I'd seen him lose his composure like this. Yeah. His voice was terribly hoarse, carrying an undisguised tremor. "I am sorry. I failed to protect you. I am sorry." He buried his face in the crook of my neck, his scorching breath spraying on my skin. I heard his suppressed breathing with a hint of sobbing. This time, he didn't say it in his heart. He spoke that apology to me with his own mouth. My heart felt like something had slammed into it hard, both sour and soft. I raised my hand and gently hugged him back. I am fine, Xiaoyan. Because I have you, okay, sisters, I have to speak from my heart here. Writing this part, I broke down myself. Have you noticed throughout the entire story? Xiaoyan's "I love you" never comes out of his mouth. He uses the silver hairpin, he uses the charcoal brazier, he uses the overturned table, he uses the trembling. "I am sorry," he speaks. This is what I, as a screenwriter, most want to convey. The person who truly loves you isn't the one who says the sweetest things, but the one who, when you are in danger, doesn't even care about his dragon robe and rushes in first. Qingyu being able to hear his inner thoughts is a cheat ability, but Xiaoyan speaking through actions, that is what truly moves me about this relationship. What makes a power fantasy satisfying isn't just villains falling, but also this kind of sense of security from being fiercely protected by someone. He held me for a very, very long time until his trembling body gradually calmed down. He let go of me, cupped my face, and examined me carefully, as if to confirm whether I was truly unharmed. Then, the fear and vulnerability in his eyes completely faded away. In that place was a bone-chilling killing intent that stirred up monstrous waves. He knew now his enemies had become so depraved that they wanted to kill me. He couldn't wait any longer. This act should end now. That night after the incident, the candlelight in Chaoyang Palace never went out all night. Xiaoyan didn't leave. Had dismissed everyone, leaving only me and him. The room was so quiet you could hear each other's breathing. He personally poured me a cup of hot tea and handed it to me. Yue, it is all my fault. He stopped acting, his face full of exhaustion and self-reproach. I thought that keeping you here was the best protection for you, but I never expected that those wolves would still find an opportunity to exploit. He confessed everything to me, from discovering when he ascended the throne that the Minister of Personnel's faction had already become too powerful to control. to how he planned to destroy them with excessive favor, to how he intended to consolidate military power. Deposing the empress was the most helpless yet what he considered the most critical step in this plan. The minister's forces are deeply entrenched. If I moved against them directly, it would inevitably cause turmoil in the court. More importantly, they see you as a thorn in their side. I was afraid they would use you to threaten me. His voice was very low. Only by making you a disfavored, deposed empress would they lower their guard, and only then could I keep you far from the center of their storm. I thought I had everything under control, but I never imagined they would be so bold as to make a move on you directly. As he said this, his fist clenched again, murderous intent churning in his eyes. I listened quietly, my heart a jumble of emotions, all the previous doubts, confusion, even the slight trace of resentment. All vanished into thin air at this moment. All that remained was overwhelming heartache. My young man, my husband, he had silently shouldered so much all alone. I understand. I looked into his eyes and said earnestly, Xiao Yan, I understand everything. He froze, seemingly not expecting me to be this calm. I smiled and placed my hand over the back of his. However, it seems you've underestimated me too. I paused, then revealed the secret that would shock him. Those moles in the capital garrison, I was the one who helped you root them out. Xiao Yan's eyes suddenly widened. His face filled with disbelief. You, what did you say? Those old subordinates my father left me may seem idle on ordinary days, but at critical moments, they still have their uses. I said lightly, Xiao Yan completely petrified. He stared at me blankly, and it took him quite a while to digest this information. Then, immense joy and emotion flooded over him like a tidal wave. He grabbed my hand so excited he could barely speak coherently. You, heavens, heavens. My empress is the smartest and most capable woman under the heavens. She's actually been helping me in secret. What virtue or ability do I possess to have married such a fairy? I must build her a golden palace. No, 10 of them. The fireworks in his heart had already exploded into a galaxy of stars. I felt a bit embarrassed under his burning gaze and withdrew my hand. All right. Now isn't the time to talk about this, I said seriously. Since they've already torn off the mask, we can't just sit and wait for defeat either. What do you plan to do next? Our relationship underwent a subtle transformation in this moment. No longer the monarch playing a role and the deposed empress pretending not to know, but comrades in arms fighting side by side. An inseparable married couple. Xiao Yan quickly calmed down, his eyes flashing with a sharp gleam. Since they dare to make a move, it means they're already desperate. I suspect the next step will very likely be to take a desperate gamble and launch a palace coup. Then we turn their scheme against them. The corners of Xiao Yan's mouth curved into a cold arc. If they want to play, I'll play a big game with them. Over the next few days, Xiao Yan and I began secretly making arrangements in the cold palace. He was in charge of the court. I was in charge of the inner palace. I used my knowledge of the inner palace personnel to provide him with various intelligence, analyzing which people could be used and which needed to be guarded against. And he continued to play the role of that incompetent ruler in court, even intensifying his act. After that incident, not only did he not thoroughly investigate, he instead pinned the blame on an insignificant little eunuch and hastily closed the case. This made the Minister of Personnel's faction even more convinced that the emperor was weak and incompetent, nothing to fear. They needed an opportunity that would allow them to legitimately eliminate the evil influences around the ruler. We decided this opportunity would be created by noble consort Hui. Xiao Yan deliberately ran into noble consort Hui again on his way to pay respects to the Empress Dowager. This time, he no longer responded with a cold face. He merely looked at her with an extremely disgusted and weary gaze. Then he sighed and said something meaningful. The Empress is so jealous. And now she is caused such a disaster. It truly chills my heart. He also said, perhaps I really should consider establishing a new empress. Noble consort Hui was absolutely overjoyed when she heard this. She thought that incident had completely extinguished the emperor's last bit of affection for me. She thought her chance had finally come. That very night, she couldn't wait to pass this wonderful news to her father through secret channels. The fish had taken the bait. The Minister of Personnel received a message from his daughter and was overjoyed beyond expectation. In his view, the emperor's complete disappointment with Shen Qingyur was the perfect opportunity for him to make his move. Once his daughter ascended to the empress position and bore a prince, the kingdom of Great Liang would be within easy reach. He immediately contacted the Western Liang envoy he had secretly colluded with. agreeing to coordinate an internal-external attack and launch a palace coup at the Imperial Autumn Hunt half a month later. Their plan was to have assassins sent by Western Liang create chaos at the hunting grounds and assassinate the emperor. Then, the Minister of Personnel would lead his men planted within the Imperial Guards to control the entire hunting grounds and palace under the pretext of purging the Emperor's side and executing the wicked emperors who plotted against His Majesty. By then, whether the Emperor was dead or injured, he would become their puppet. This plan couldn't be called anything but thorough. Unfortunately for them, their every step was clearly displayed before Xiao Yan and me. The location for the autumn hunt was inadvertently set by us at a valley outside the city called Trapped Dragon Valley. That name was truly a good omen. The terrain there was easy to defend and hard to attack, an excellent ambush location. On the eve of the autumn hunt, I remained in my cold palace. But I was no longer that idle deposed empress leisurely sipping tea. I used the command authority of the empress's seal, which Xiao Yan had never truly revoked, to secretly reassign the defenses at all key points throughout the palace. All critical positions were replaced with old subordinates of the Duke of Zhongguo and Xiao Yan's trusted confidants. The entire imperial palace had quietly transformed into an airtight iron net. I stayed in command within the palace to ensure that no matter what happened outside, the palace interior would be absolutely secure. Meanwhile, Xiao Yan led a group of royal princes and high ministers, along with the commander of the imperial guards he trusted most, marching grandly toward Trap Dragon Valley. It was a grand hunt, a hunt to lure the prey into a trap. On the day of the autumn hunt, the sky was high and clear. Within Trap Dragon Valley, horns blared and steeds galloped. Everything was no different from the autumn hunts of previous years. Until the afternoon, when a group of Western Liang envoys who had accidentally gotten separated stumbled panic-stricken into the area around the emperor's encampment. Immediately after, assassins claiming to protect burst out from the forest on all sides. Assassins. Protect His Majesty. The scene instantly descended into chaos. At this moment, the Minister of Personnel and his faction of officials finally bared their fangs. He drew the sword hidden on his person and raised his arm, shouting loudly, "The demon Empress Shen has colluded with foreign enemies and plotted to harm His Majesty. As subjects of Great Liang, we vow to purge the court of those misleading the sovereign, execute the demon Empress and restore proper order to the court." The imperial guards he brought all responded in kind, drawing their blades in confrontation. The Minister of Personnel's face was full of smugness, believing he had victory in his grasp. He looked at Xiao Yan, who appeared flustered and panicked while being surrounded by assassins, as if he could already see the day he would be robed in imperial yellow. However, he did not see. On the high ground on both sides of the valley, countless bows and arrows had quietly taken aim at them. He also did not see behind him. Those he believed to be his loyal own people had eyes revealing cold mockery. Xiao Yan wiped the chicken blood wound on his face and lifted his head from his panic, smiling. That smile, in the Minister of Personnel's eyes, was more terrifying than a demon. "Minister," Xiao Yan's voice was not loud, yet it clearly carried throughout the entire valley, tired from acting all this time. "Now, it is my turn." The words had barely fallen. A whistling arrow shot straight into the sky. On both sides of the valley, war drums thundered in unison. Countless armored soldiers descended from above, completely surrounding the Minister of Personnel's rebel forces. Leading them was none other than the new commander of the capital garrison, also my father's most trusted, Lieutenant General Chen. On the other side, the Imperial Guards commander swung his long blade, and the Imperial Guards behind him immediately turned their weapons, pointing their blades at the officials from the minister's faction. Inside and outside coordination, catching a turtle in a jar, the triumphant expression on the Minister of Personnel's face instantly froze, turning into extreme terror and disbelief. "Number impossible. You? How could you?" He looked at those who were supposed to be his trusted confidants, looked at the massive army descending from the sky. His mind completely blank, he couldn't figure out where things went wrong. General Chen walked before Xiao Yan, knelt on one knee, his voice resonating like a great bell. "This subject has arrived late to rescue your majesty." Xiao Yan helped him up, his gaze turning toward the ashen-faced Minister of Personnel. "Surrender without resistance. Your time of death has come." The rebellion, from start to finish, lasted no more than the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. A thunderous crackdown, clean and efficient. Those rebel forces barely put up any decent resistance before being completely disarmed. The Minister of Personnel collapsed to the ground, like a dead dog with its tendons ripped out. He knew he had lost utterly and completely. The news of the palace coup's failure spread back to the imperial palace like a gust of wind. In Changqian Palace, imperial concubine Hui was trying on an ornate phoenix crown before the mirror. It was one she had secretly commissioned craftsmen to make, modeled after my empress's regulations. She thought that at this very moment in Kunlong Valley, her father had already achieved great success. She would soon be able to rightfully wear this phoenix crown and become the most noble woman in Dalian. When the palace gate was smashed open with a thunderous crash and Xiao Yan walked in carrying an aura of killing intent and cold frost, her beautiful dream was completely shattered. Your Majesty, noble consort Hui stood up in panic. The phoenix crown on her head tilted to one side, both ridiculous and pathetic. Xiao Yan's gaze was cold as a blade. He said nothing, only violently threw letter after letter in noble consort Hui's face. See for yourself. Those were secret letters exchanged between her and her father. They detailed how they plotted the palace coup, how they contacted foreign enemies, and even how they poisoned that bowl of food to put me to death. The evidence was irrefutable. Noble consort Hui collapsed to the ground, her face drained of all color. She still wanted to make excuses, still wanted to cry out her grievances. Your Majesty, this concubine is wronged. They forced me to do it. Xiao Yan looked down at her from above, his eyes containing not a shred of pity, only endless disgust. Compared to my Yueyu, you are not even worth a single finger of hers. Poisoning the Empress, treason, and betrayal dying 10,000 times wouldn't be enough. What was in his heart, I heard later when he recounted it himself. At the time, he only said one sentence to this woman: white silk or poisoned wine, choose for yourself. In the end, a roll of white silk concluded noble consort Hui's sinful and pathetic life. The Minister of Personnel and his cronies were all thrown into heavenly prison to be executed after autumn, with their 9 generations of kin implicated. In the inner palace, those fence-sitters who had once gone with the flow stepped on the low and sucked up to the high and ran to Chaoyang Palace to lord it over others, were now trembling in fear one by one, staying behind closed doors. The entire imperial palace, and even the entire outer court, underwent a complete purge. No one dared to covet the position of Empress anymore, and no one dared to show me even the slightest disrespect anymore. I stayed in Chaoyang Palace, listening to the news coming from outside one after another. My heart calm as still water. The dust had settled. What needed to end had all ended. I walked to the window and pushed it open. A fresh breeze rushed in, dispersing the last bit of stuffiness in the palace hall. The sky had cleared. I heard Xiao Yan's inner thoughts, cheering and leaping with joy all the way, rushing in my direction down. All done. Finally cleaned up all this trash. Can bring my Yueyu back now. The phoenix carriage must use a most grand ceremony. I'll personally go get her. My empress should come home. Listening to the cheers in his heart, I couldn't help but show a long-lost smile from the bottom of my heart. Yes, I should go home. Xiao Yan moved quickly. The next day, an imperial edict announcing to the world was delivered to Chaoyang Palace. The imperial edict stated that after thorough investigation, it was confirmed that Empress Shen had been framed. The so-called excessive jealousy was pure fabrication. The previous dethronement of the Empress was an expedient measure the Emperor had no choice but to take to protect the Empress's safety. Now that the treacherous officials have been eliminated and the injustice cleared, the Empress's position and honors shall be restored immediately. This imperial edict was written with such genuine emotion, both explaining the cause and effect, while saving my dignity completely. Right after that, Xiao Yan came in person. He didn't ride the imperial palanquin, but came on foot. Instead, he wore a bright yellow casual robe. Followed by Li Diquan and a group of palace servants, he walked to the entrance of Chaoyang Palace and, in front of everyone, bowed deeply to me. Yueyu, I've come to take you home. His voice carried a barely perceptible nervousness and solemnity. I was foolish before, acting without proper consideration, nearly losing a worthy empress and causing you so much suffering. Please, Empress, forgive me. What if Yueyu ignores me? She is definitely still mad. Should I kneel down to apologize? No way, so many people are watching. An empress' dignity still matters. Yueyu, please agree already. I've already warmed a bed for you. Watching him with that serious face while his mind was frantically racing like that, I almost cracked up again. I cleared my throat, put on my empress demeanor, and deliberately said with reluctant acceptance, Your Majesty is too kind. Since the truth has been uncovered, then this consort shall return to the palace with Your Majesty. Xiao Yan's face immediately lit up with joy, and he hurriedly stepped forward to help me up himself. Samang, respectfully invite Her Majesty, the Empress, to board the Phoenix carriage. The magnificent Phoenix carriage that had been waiting outside slowly approached. I boarded the Phoenix carriage and, amid the envious, awestruck, and regretful gazes of countless palace servants, departed in great glory from these cold palaces, where I had lived for several months. Along the way, all palace servants knelt on the ground, calling out in unison, "Long live Her Majesty, the Empress." Those who had once kicked me when I was down and watched coldly from the sidelines now buried their heads lower than anyone else, fearing I might see them. I didn't make things difficult for anyone, just as Xiaoyan said. Let the past be the past. My magnanimity made Xiaoyan praise me to the skies in his heart. Truly worthy of being my empress, such a broad mind, a model of maternal grace for the realm, virtue befitting her position. I've really found a treasure cunning palace had already been cleaned until it looked brand new. All the furnishings were exactly the same as when I left. In fact, even more exquisite than before. That evening, Xiaoyan set up a family banquet at Kuning Palace. He dismissed all the servants, and in the vast palace hall, only the two of us remained. The dishes were still those I loved to eat. But he had no mind for eating. He was like a big dog who had finally found his master, wagging his tail as he sidled up to me. Looking at me eagerly, "Yer, hug, I miss you so much." He didn't dare say it out loud, but in his heart, he was acting like a total baby. I had no choice under his gaze. So I put down my chopsticks and opened my arms. He immediately threw himself into my embrace like a swallow returning to the forest, hugging me tightly, rubbing his head back and forth on my shoulder. "Yer, I'll never let you leave me again," he said in a muffled voice. I held him, gently patting his back, like comforting a child. Okay. After the turmoil of deposing the Empress completely subsided, my mind-reading ability didn't disappear. Instead, it became a unique kind of intimacy between Xiaoyan and me. For example, when he attended morning court. On the surface, he sat majestically on the dragon throne, listening to the minister's lengthy reports with an expressionless face. In reality, lying in bed at Kuning Palace, I could hear his live internal commentary. The Minister of Revenue is crying poor again. Where did last year's allocated funds go? Does he think I am an idiot? The Vice Minister of War's beard seems to have grown a bit more today. It is almost dragging on the ground. So boring. One court to end. Want to go back and hold Yue. Why would often shake with laughter under the covers. When he returned from court, I would casually ask him, "Did the Minister of Revenue ask you for money again today?" He would look at me with shock on his face. Yeah, how did you know?" I would smile enigmatically and say nothing. Or for instance, when he finished handling government affairs and wanted to be intimate with me, but he still had to maintain his composure. State affairs were burdensome today. I am somewhat tired. But inwardly he was screaming, "Why hasn't Yu come to find me yet? Why hasn't she come to care about me? I am so exhausted. Come hug me already." I would deliberately give him the cold shoulder, reading my book and drinking tea on my own, until he couldn't hold it in anymore, and like a wronged little wife, he'd shuffle over to my side and tug at my sleeve. "Yu, my shoulders are sore." Only then would I put down my book and smile as I massaged his shoulders for him. Our days passed one by one in this sweet and amusing push and pull. That day, a neighboring country sent an envoy to visit. In the delegation was a young and spirited princess who, upon seeing Xiaoyan, was stunned by his beauty and publicly expressed her admiration. At the banquet, the princess repeatedly toasted Xiaoyan, her gaze bold and fervent. Xiaoyan maintained a cold expression throughout, completely unmoved. As the Empress, I sat gracefully by his side, wearing a smile, the picture of imperial dignity. But in my mind, I was nearly drowned by the barrage of Xiaoyan's desperate survival instincts. "Don't look at me. I am not good looking. I am a married man. My heart belongs only to my Empress. You must not misunderstand. I have nothing to do with her whatsoever." Her smile is so fake, not even as beautiful as my Yu's frown. And this quickly, I want to go home and explain to the Empress. I held back my laughter, while still having to put on a magnanimous act of serving dishes to His Majesty and the Princess. As soon as the banquet ended, Xiaoyan practically dragged me back to Kuning Palace like he was fleeing. The moment we entered, he proactively pulled me over and began reporting his thoughts in detail. From what the princess looked like to what she said to what he himself was thinking. He laid it all out clearly. Every single detail. He looked so anxious. He was practically ready to kneel on a washboard for me. Watching him so flustered, desperately trying to prove his innocence, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. I let out a PFFT and laughed. "Alright, I know." Xiaoyan froze. "You know what?" I walked up to him, stood on my tiptoes and kissed the corner of his mouth. Then I leaned close to his ear, and in a voice only the two of us could hear, softly revealed that enormous secret. I know, because I've always been able to hear your thoughts. Your Majesty. The air instantly froze. Xiao Yan's entire body petrified on the spot. His eyes widened like saucers, his mouth slightly agape, wearing an expression like he'd been struck by lightning. What did she say? She can hear my thoughts. Always. Then all those things I thought before. His face, at a visibly observable speed, went from white to red, then to purple, and finally red enough to bleed. He recalled his inner wailing when he deposed the Empress. He recalled his jealousy running wild when he disguised himself as a little eunuch. He recalled his nightly ramblings to thin air. She heard everything crystal clear. Our wise and mighty Majesty finally broke down. He cried out, scooped me up in one motion, and tossed me onto the soft bed. Then his whole body pressed down on me, burying his face in the crook of my neck, and started acting like a spoiled child. Yue, you are not allowed to laugh. I don't care. Even if you heard it, you have to pretend you didn't. My dignity, my face, all gone, pinned beneath him. I laughed so hard I could barely breathe. So it turns out, this Majesty of mine, deep down, he is really a crybaby who acts spoiled and gets embarrassed easily. A giant man-child. Outside the window, the moonlight was gentle. Inside the hall, candlelight flickered red. My Majesty and I still have a very, very long time of sweet moments ahead. The deposed Empress's mind reading isn't for crying, it is for winning Qing, Yue. At the moment everyone thought she was at her most pathetic, quietly obtained the strongest intelligence cheat in the game. While leisurely drinking tea and basking in the sun at the cold palace, she helped the emperor pull out the toughest thorn in his side, and finally returned home openly and rightfully as empress. 0 tears throughout. Crushing everyone throughout. That is what winning looks like. Honestly, my favorite part of this story isn't the deposed empress, isn't the palace upheaval, isn't noble consort Hui's downfall. It is that detailed Xiao Yan at the Golden Luan Hall, in front of all the civil and military officials. Reading the imperial edict, deposing the empress with such clear enunciation, with such mercilessness, but his hand on the dragon throne's armrest clenched tight, veins bulging. When I wrote that line, I felt that was this man's truest self. It is not that he doesn't love her, he loves her too much. That is why he has to push her away. This kind of hurting you hard to desperately protect you. Stubbornness, of course, doesn't deserve to be encouraged. After all, sisters, in real life, if someone pushes you away in the name of protecting you, you should still run when you need to run. But in the story, I gave him an empress who could truly match that stubbornness. She didn't wait in place for him to save her. She held up the situation herself. He thought he was protecting her, but actually she was also protecting him. This is what I think is the best kind of love. Not one person unilaterally holding up the other, but two people, each supporting half the sky and then standing side by side together. Alright sisters, that is it for this episode. If you also like this kind of clear-headed yet sweet, strong female lead story, remember to like and save and tell me which part you loved most. See you next time. Love you all.